Hi everyone, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Lauren, and today I'm going to be talking about all of the books that I read in the month of March. So March was a pretty good reading month. I completed a grand total of 6 books and it came out to about 2,500 pages. The ratings were kind of all over the place, as they usually are for me. I had one 2.5 star, one 3 star, one 3.5 star, 2 4 stars, and a 5 star. Though I did read a couple of books that were pretty okay, I also read a couple of books that I really loved, so I feel like it was a pretty balanced reading month for me. As usual, I am going to discuss the books in order from the one I liked the least all the way up to the one I liked the most, so we can end on a high note. So let's just jump right in and talk about the books. So the first book, the book that's kind of at the bottom of the stack for me, was This Splintered Silence by Kayla Olson. This is a YA sci-fi. This is the story of a group of young people who are having to take control of their ship after it has been struck by a very deadly virus that has killed off all the adult passengers on board. And so they're trying to get control of the situation, and then all of a sudden people start to die. They think that it's some strain of the virus that is causing it, but as more people start to die, they start getting the sense that perhaps people are being killed off. So it has this sort of murder mystery vibe to it. This book was pretty okay for me. It was a fairly mediocre reading experience. As far as storyline goes, I liked the storyline well enough, but the character development for me just kind of wasn't really there. I gave this book 2.5 stars, which, I mean, that's halfway to 5, so that's okay. You know, that's an okay rating. The characters were just too much like just sort of shells of people. They were mostly defined by their temperaments rather than anything about their personalities. I generally put plot over character development, and the plot in this book was better than the character development, but I don't know, the character development was just so weak that, I don't know, it really couldn't. The plot wasn't good enough to make up for the lack of character development. The next book up the line is Do You Dream of Terra-Two by Timmy O. This is also a YA sci-fi about a bunch of teenagers on a ship in space. There are some adults present on this ship. I think it's maybe 4 adults and 6 teenagers, so a crew of 10. This Earth-like habitable planet has been discovered, you know, way off in the galaxy, and this group of people has set off to get to this planet, and it's going to take them over 20 years to get there. It's all character development with not a whole lot of plot. Overall, I ended up giving this book 3 stars. I also thought that it was okay book. I liked it better than This Splintered Silence, but one big beef that I had with this book is that the young adults, the teenagers that they selected to be on this crew, were very unbelievable and unrealistic. A lot of times they acted like middle schoolers. They were very immature, there was a ton of drama. There was like one character who was sort of selected, a young man who was going to be kind of in training to eventually become the commander, who sort of antagonized other characters in the book. One in particular, like, bullied him really hard. I just do not believe that in this type of situation, if the government, if Earth, whoever, decided to send off a team of teenagers to be in space and reach this Earth-like planet, these are not the kind of teenagers that they would select to be on this ship. Not all teenagers are like that. I think that they would take great pains to find the most mature ones of the bunch and get them on that ship and send them off. So that's kind of a rant, I guess, about this book. This is still an interesting book. Really questions the idea of what would it be like for a group of people to be stuck on a ship together for over 20 years. It was just, I don't know, the dynamics, the personalities and the dynamics of the characters was a little far-fetched for me. So the next book on the list is Remote Control by Nadia Korafor. This book, I think it's usually listed as a sci-fi, but this is not, in my opinion, it's not really a sci-fi. This is a much more like literary folklore type of story. Feels almost as though it is based on a real African folktale. It's not a very long story. I think it's only about 150-ish pages, so I don't want to give too much away, but the general idea of it is about a young woman who has these sort of, I don't know if you'd call it like supernatural or magical or just sort of unearthly abilities that the people fear but respect, and it's about her sort of traveling around and using these powers. It's really a deep dive on this character's sort of life experience, her journey, her hopes and dreams and fears. It's just intensely focused on this one character. Overall, I gave this book 4 stars. I really enjoyed the writing style. Nydia Korver has a beautiful writing style. It's just a very lovely flowing style, but it's not what I would call poetic or flowery. It's just very, she has a way with words, very well spoken, very articulate style of writing that I really enjoy. And also I thought that it was a very clever story, something I had never read anything quite like it, just something very unusual, very unique. Between the concept and the writing style though, it is the writing style that makes this book as good as it is, in my opinion. If you are someone who really enjoys novellas, if you enjoy more literary stories and sort of folktale style storytelling, you may really enjoy Remote Control. So the next book up the list is actually a book that I gave a lower rating to than I did the Remote Control, but a book that I did end up, in fact, enjoying more, and that was Stormfront by Jim Butcher. This is an urban fantasy. It's actually the first in the series, the Dresden Files series. This is the story of a man named Harry Dresden, he's kind of a detective PI type of character, but he's also a wizard. And this is set, I think it's set in Chicago, if I recall correctly. It honestly has a really noir sort of feel to the setting. So the story is basically about Harry Dresden investigating a case of this very kind of grisly double murder and getting wrapped up in a situation that's much bigger than what he had originally signed up for. I really enjoyed this book. I ended up giving this book 3.5 stars. It definitely had some problems. This is not what I would call a literary genius by any stretch of the imagination. The writing is it's kind of corny. This is kind of a corny book, and it's a little misogynistic, and I never would have dreamed that I would enjoy this as much as I did. What it lacked in those areas, it made up for in just fun. Like, this was a really fun book to read. I will definitely continue in this series. Every now and then you just want something to cleanse your palate, and I can definitely see how this series will most likely end up being those types of books for me. It's exciting, it's adventurous, and yeah, if it sounds remotely appealing to you, I would absolutely recommend that you pick it up. So my second favorite book that I completed this month was Lair of Dreams by Libba Bray. This is the second book in the Diviner series. I think it's a 4-book series. This is an urban fantasy, really just kind of pure unadulterated urban fantasy. The first book in the series, The Diviners, for me was more of like an urban fantasy horror mix. This was a different story than the first book. This was not like a continuation of the same story. The overall idea of the book is this sort of sleeping sickness that has hit the city, and these characters that are called diviners, they have these sort of supernatural abilities, trying to figure out what's going on and trying to solve it. I really enjoyed this book, and this has definitely been one of my most anticipated books, and I ended up giving it 4 stars, so I feel like it really delivered. There is just something about this series that really resonates with me. I think it's a lot of fun, and I think I will continue on to the 3rd book. I just really enjoy the setting. It's set in like 1920s New York City, and so it gives off this kind of cool roaring 20s vibe. The characters, I'm beginning to get fairly attached to them, and I'm interested to learn more about them and their lives. I don't know, this one, it really hit the mark for me. So yeah, 4 stars for Lair of Dreams. All right, we've made it to the last book on the list, my favorite book that I completed in March, and it was Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. I have the UK edition, so it's broken into 2 parts, but it is 1 book. And I have been reading this for the last 3 months. I finally finished it at the end of March. I'm participating in a year-long Stormlight Archive read-along with my friend Yolene at Yolene Reads and several other people. We're going to be having a live discussion on April 16th. I think it's going to be at 5 p.m. Central, but I will be sure to keep you guys updated when I know for sure. yeah, I finally get why everyone is so into the Stormlight Archive. Like, I get it. The first half of the book, the first part of the book, I thought it was good. I thought it was okay, but whenever, the way it all came together in the end, oh my God, this is so good. This book is so good. The Way of Kings, I think, is definitely much more of a world-building story since it is the first in a series. So it's setting up a vast and complicated world. It's told from pretty much 3 distinct character perspectives. The first one is a young woman who her family is in sort of financial dire straits, and she has set off to try to solve that, try to fix that situation, help her family. The second character is a man who has wrongfully been forced into slavery. And then the third is a character who's a very important leader in this community, and he has begun to have these kind of disturbing visions, and people think he's going crazy, but you know, he feels like there's some sort of meaning in it. I don't know if that's the best, most helpful description, but that's about as much as I can condense this, like, I don't know, whatever it is, 1,200 page monster of a story. Overall, the story is just very accessible, easy to follow along. The characters are interesting, and the storyline, I don't know, it was just a really interesting storyline, but man, the ending of this book, it was a clincher. It was fantastic. Whenever I got to like the last, I would say, 10% of the book, I just could not put it down. So I think that's really kind of all I want to say about it. I'll save my in-depth thoughts for the live discussion that we're having on the 16th. But I absolutely loved Way of Kings. I gave it 5 stars. I understand why everybody gives it, you know, high ratings. Brandon Sanderson is a master at sort of pulling these types of complicated stories together at the end, and this was no exception. So yeah, 5 stars for Way of Kings. So I think that that's going to be it for me today. Those are all of the books that I read in the month of March. I would be curious to know if you have read any of them and what you thought about them. So I hope that you will talk to me about it in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, I hope that you will like it and possibly subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye.